Hello, I'm Jeff M. Brown, legal writer with the State Bar, coming to you from the annual Solo and Small Firm Conference here at Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells. It's the first conference back in person, I believe, since 2019. And I am here with Judge Kristine Snow, who just got done with several other jurists talking on a panel called The View from the Bench. And wanted to go over that and ask you some questions about that presentation, Judge.
Absolutely.
You're a judge in
Dodge County,
and folks might not know that you were a small firm practitioner yourself.
Correct. I've been to this conference many times as a participant and spoke on a few panels in the past as a practitioner, but this is the first time, obviously. I got elected in 2020, so this is the first time I've been back as a judge. So I'm very glad to be here.
How does that experience as a small firm lawyer inform how you see things from the bench?
Oh, I think it's a huge benefit, but I also, being as close to what was going on at the beginning of the pandemic, I was running for election and got elected in the spring of 2020. So it was just starting, but I had a little bit of opportunity to, complete my practice and wind down my practice while COVID was in place. Since I took the bench, though, our county was one of the first counties to reopen, and we had jury trials from the day that I first started, and have continued to have in-person jury trials for most of the time, as well as other hearings. So our county was not, the layout of our courthouse was such that we didn't have to do it as much. We didn't have to be isolated and do as many things remotely as some of the other bigger counties like Dane and Milwaukee and those other places.
And is that because it's a newer building or because it's an older building?
It's a newer building. I forget what year it was built, but it's we have pretty wide hallways, and it's just not as congested as some of the other courthouses that I practiced in.
There was a lot of talk in the panel from lawyers in the audience and the panel members as well about what works, what doesn't work, what worked, what didn't work with regard to virtual hearings, Zoom, during the pandemic. Can you talk about a couple of the ones that from your view did work and a couple that didn't, and why not, or why?
So our courthouse, I think one of the best benefits of having Zoom or remote appearances available were people from out of county, or people that had transportation issues. And so because we were prepared to be able to take their testimony remotely or have them participate remotely, that has spilled over even after we've reopened our doors to allowing more opportunities for people to appear remotely. I would say I'm more liberal with that than some of the other judges. Each judge has their own policies and procedures and things that they like and don't like. Evidentiary hearings are always going to be hard doing them remotely. None of the judges like to do that. We want to see the people in our courtroom. We want to get that feedback from them face to face, and it's very difficult to really get a feel. A lot of what a trial court judge is gauge credibility, and it's very difficult to do that through a TV screen.
What's one or two things you wish lawyers did better or took into account more when they appear before you?
One of the things that they could do better is being more prepared or understanding the background of the judge. So, for example, my background was in family law, bankruptcy, civil law. I have a lot less experience in criminal type cases. So for me, it's very helpful if the criminal attorney in front of me knows that they do educate me on what they think the law is from both sides. If they just assume that I know what the law is, and certainly I really try to be prepared for the hearings as well as I can as well. But it's your opportunity to engage me and educate me on what the law is. Don't just assume that I'm going to know what it is. Partially because you have to create your own record anyway. So you have to create a record that the judge can decide off of. If you don't bring it to my attention, you're not doing your clients the best service that they can get.
For instance, you might not know, and you probably do not, having been on the bench for a couple of years, but don't have the familiarity with, say, the Brady standard or a mocking hearing the way a former DA or a PD would.
Right. So, yes, I've done my own research, but I want to hear from both of you. And it may seem elementary to you, but it's important that you create a record, and so educating me is your opportunity to do that as well.
Great. Do you like being a judge?
I love being a judge.
What's the best thing about it?
There are a lot of good things about being a judge. I love the variety that I have. Our court is a general jurisdiction court, so I'm doing everything from simple name change hearings to mental commitments to guardianship hearings to criminal cases to family law cases. And I'm really learning a lot more about our legal system as a whole, and I really enjoy that. And I like seeing all the different processes and how they all work together, or maybe don't work together, as the case may be. But I've really gotten a new appreciation for the work that our clerks do in our clerk's office, for example, because they're handling all these different types of cases, and they are on the front lines talking with the public. And there's a lot of people in my county in particular that don't have attorneys, and there's fewer and fewer attorneys in our communities. I think the Dodge County Bar, for example, I think is half the size that it was 10 years ago. It's a problem not just in criminal law, which we hear about the lack of public defenders all the time, but it's a problem all across the board for attorneys in smaller communities.
What happens in a name change hearing? I'm thinking about the standard ones where somebody may get married and want to change their last name or their surname. But what are you doing in a name change hearing? What, for instance, if I wanted to change my name to Batman, what would go on in the hearing? There
are standards, but they're pretty broad standards about what you can change your name to. So there are a few instances that you can see in the appellate case law where name changes were denied, but. We have 4 prisons in my county, so we also have a lot of requests by prisoners to change their name, which creates a whole different dynamic, because then the Department of Corrections has the opportunity to come in and object or support the name change. Typically they're objecting because they don't want their records messed up by having a name change involved. Sometimes it's as simple as a parent whose child doesn't have a lot of contact with their other parents, and so the parent that provides most of the care wants to change the name to their name so it's similar, and sometimes the other parent is in agreement with that. Other times I've had adults come in, and I even did like an adult adoption where it was just 2 people that had a really close relationship, and the one person wanted to be adopted by the other person because they wanted to recognize that relationship as a family relationship rather than just being close friends, which I thought was a little strange, but there wasn't any legal reason for them not to do that. So it's not my as long as they meet the legal requirements, I'll take a look at it.
Right. Well, not as strange as someone wanting to be called Batman.
No.
We'll end on that note, Judge. Thank you very much for your time. It was wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Okay.